Why is there a story circulating about me on Reddit? I stomped into the classroom and shouted over Jenny. Why are you asking me? How would I know? She replied calmly as she continued looking at her book. You know exactly why I'm asking you that, I said with gritted teeth. Why would I? She got up after saying without meeting my eyes, walking to the exit of the class, and once again I could only clench my fists in anger. Do you know my car has that little feature that records everything which I had to install due to an issue? You didn't know about that before pulling that little stunt, did you? Should I just upload that? I said in a slow, angry voice which made her stop in her tracks. I met Jenny a few months ago when I entered this campus for the first time. She was standing near the fountain talking to her friends, and among them was standing my elder sister, whom I had stopped talking to for the past 3 years. She was 2 years older than me, and if you're thinking that might be the reason for not talking to my sister, well, that is a story for some other time. Anyway, I walked past them completely focused on ignoring my sister. Guess that must be the reason I couldn't notice the lingering gaze of someone else on me. After getting the details of my class schedules, I went directly to attend the first lecture that was about to start within a few minutes. Upon entering the classroom, my eyes looked around the classroom trying to find an empty chair, which I found in the second back row. So I walked to the chair and took a seat. A gorgeous-looking professor who must be in her late 30s entered the classroom right after me, and the lecture started. My focus was entirely on the lecture when the professor looked at me, paused the lecture, and asked me to introduce myself. Hi everyone, my name is Sebastian Huffman, I said in a slow tone. And as she heard my name, she immediately asked, Huffman? Are you Eva's brother? Yes, I replied, feeling bitter inside. As she was about to say something else, the same girl I saw among my sister and her friends entered the classroom, and the teacher's attention shifted toward her. Jenny, you're 20 minutes late for class. How many times should I tell you to stop hanging out with seniors during your class time? Professor said while she carelessly looked toward me while replying to her. It won't happen again, Miss Anastasia. And then she walked in my direction and stopped right in front of me. You're sitting in my seat, dude. Move, she said in a demanding voice. I did not find your name written on it. Why don't you go and sit somewhere else? I might have been a new student, but I wasn't the kind who would let others step on me. Jenny, what are you still doing standing there? Go and sit on that empty last seat and stop bothering the new student, Professor said strictly, which made Jenny glare at me annoyingly, and then walk to the back seat muttering something in her mouth that I couldn't quite understand. For the rest of the day, I noticed that only a few of my lectures clashed with Jenny's, so I was relieved because I didn't want any kind of trouble on my first day. It was better if other people stayed out of my business and let me just live my silent, peaceful life alone. But that hopeful thinking didn't last long when 2 boys came to me and started talking on their own. My attention wasn't on their conversation, so I did not know what they talked to me about, as I was just replying with yes or no. They noticed on their own that it would be useless trying to talk to me about my nature, so they went back to their seats on their own. The next day went like that. Jenny would keep glaring at me and students would try to talk to me, but then they would back off on their own. Only Professor Anastasia seemed a bit different. She was nice and talked only about the things related to her lectures. Sometimes here and there she would also ask if I was settling among others okay, or if the classes seemed understandable, to which I replied yes or no as well. But she seemed fine to me, and gradually I started to develop a crush on her. And her lectures became the only thing in the class I looked forward to. There was one guy whom I'd made friends with, Ben. He was quite a shy student, but we ended up becoming friends due to a combined project. Later I found out that Ben had a major crush on Jenny, which to be honest was quite a shock given her personality. One evening when Ben asked me if I wanted to grab a few drinks with him in the nearby bar, so I met him there, and I was shocked when I saw Jenny walking in and taking a seat among us. I know you don't like her, but please, for my sake, bear with it. Ben sensed the tension in the air, so he whispered in my ear. I had no other choice looking at the situation, so I agreed. We started drinking, but after 2 glasses I stopped since I could get easily drunk. but Jenny passed another filling glass with me saying, "Don't be a puss, only cowards can't handle their drinks." I don't know if she was saying that to get on my nerves or something else, but it worked. I drank another 3 glasses continuously. The last thing I remember was fading voice of Ben, who was asking me if I'd be able to go out on my own. When I woke up, I was having a splitting headache and I couldn't remember anything that happened last night. After taking some hangover medicine and freshening up, I took out my car and started to drive to college. I had a habit of checking Reddit to see if there was something new on it when I saw a story posted by someone implying the worst thing that could happen to a guy. The post was written by a girl who claimed that I was a big pervert. I had bad intentions for our professor, and late night in a drunken state, I tried to take advantage of a girl. She claimed that she would never reveal her identity because she was afraid her reputation would get tarnished. After reading it, I stopped the car, and I tried hard to remember what happened last night when it started to come back to me. Jenny sent Ben off home and said that she would drop me off in my car, claiming she knew my home since she was the friend with the sisters. She did take me to my car, but instead of taking me home, she started unbuttoning my shirt. I was still in little sense, so I resisted her. When she tried forcing me to sleep with her, I pushed her, saying I liked someone else. She stopped and glared at me, asking whom it was. I mumbled Professor Anastasia's name before passing out. The moment I remembered everything, I felt nothing but rage. So I started the car and drove to the college, determined to confront her in front of everyone, as I had already mentioned before. I'm not the kind who would let others step on me. Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. This happened a few years ago, but upon hearing the Reddit stories my classmates were sharing, it reminded me of the incident that happened to me. It was around the late 2010s when my mom took me to Grandpa's house, who was a retired military man. He used to tell me all the stories of the times when he was serving the country and how he managed to survive all the high times when I lived here till the age of 12. But for the past few years, he was suffering from severe dementia mixed with some mental illness that I had no idea about. Living in the countryside, Grandma did not trust that doctors would take good care of him in this condition, so she did not admit him. Anyway, as we entered the neighborhood talking in the old nostalgic smell of our surroundings, a guy who looked familiar approached us. For a few seconds, the two of us stared at each other trying to recognize when he hesitantly said, "Kevin?" At the same time, I recognized him as well and I asked, "Are you Fred?" He smiled wholeheartedly and replied while asking at the same time, "Of course, dude, how long has it been? Are you here for good now?" "No, Ma and I are just here to visit Grandpa." I shook his hand as he welcomed me while informing him of the purpose of our visit. Ma also hugged the guy as the two of us used to be best friends, and he practically used to live with us, looking at the amount of time he spent at our house. "Yeah, I heard his condition has gotten worse," he said, trying to look away, followed by another sentence. "Okay then, enjoy your visit. See you around, Aunt Teresa. Kevin?" And then he left. When we were walking by the grocery store, Mom thought she should buy some things since she did not know how Grandma was managing alone, so I followed her inside. She brought some fruits and healthy stuff, then tried to call Grandma to ask if there was anything she needed at home. But just like before, she still did not pick up. "Why isn't Ma picking up her phone from last night? Doesn't she know people would get worried?" she mumbled in frustration, and then asked the counter boy to ring up the items she had brought. When we were done, I followed Mom, trying to catch up to her steps as she was walking way too fast in a rush to reach early. The moment we stepped foot in the house, a nasty metallic stench hit our nose that filled in the entire house. Mom and I looked at each other in confusion, then rushed inside trying to find the source of the blood, when we stopped near the stairs, horrified at what was before our eyes. The entire floor was filled with Grandma's blood dripping through her head and legs, while she lay dead on the floor at the end of the stairs. At first glance, anyone would say that she may have fallen from the stairs and this is the result of that. But looking closely, there were clear signs of struggle on her body. Grandma's room was upstairs, so we had to carefully cross the dead body if we wanted to go check on him. But since we did not want to contaminate any possible evidence suspecting it to be a murder, we thought it'd be best if we called the police first. Ma dialed 911 and informed them about the situation, while I went around the house trying to find if Grandpa was somewhere other than in his room. After the arrival of the police, we informed them that our sick grandpa was upstairs, and we needed to bring him downstairs if he needed constant care. So they agreed and carefully managed to bring him downstairs. By looking at Grandpa, he seemed sick looking at how he continued staring into the air without uttering a word. Grandma's body was sent for autopsy, and the samples for the fingerprints. Officers already informed us that there was no sign of someone else other than the two elderly in the house, so the possibility of her death by falling down the stairs was higher. The way they emphasized the word two elders almost made it seem like he was suspecting Grandpa of murder, but it was impossible since Grandpa was the kind of guy who had never even raised his voice at her, so raising hands would be out of the question. Grandpa's room was prepared in the left third one downstairs, and after helping him with his medicines and feeding him some fruits, Mom went ahead to prepare dinner. We were all mourning Grandma, but to tend to Grandpa we had to stay normal, so I thought maybe if I tell him one of the stories that he used to tell him, it could help him jog some of his memories. But I started the story, Grandpa weirdly looked at me, and then all of a sudden, he lunged at me while saying, "How dare you infiltrate our camp and kill one of my comrades?" His voice was filled with rage and resentment as he grabbed me by the throat. I struggled to get away from him, but surprisingly, he was unbelievably strong. That was when Ma walked in and rushed to us while screaming. She somehow managed to get him away from me, and as he tried to chase us out of the room, she locked it. "Ma, do you think?" I hesitantly asked. "Yes, I think it was him. The struggle signs must be from a similar experience as you," she said in a slow voice as tears started dripping down her face. "I don't think it's safe to let him stay at home. We ought to admit him, Ma," I said. "I'm thinking the same, son," she said in a defeated voice as she walked back to the kitchen. The next day, we admitted him to the hospital urgently and informed the doctors about his worsening condition. The doctor told us that it was common in dementia patients to live in memory and mistake people for someone else from the past as they don't recognize them in their current condition. But it was rather unfortunate that the memory Grandpa was clinging on to was something from the time he was fighting in the army. Autopsy reports also concluded that the fingerprints found on her neck were indeed Grandpa's. It must be when she was near the stairs that he strangled her, but she somehow managed to get away from his grip and fell down the stairs, resulting in her death. The trials were to be held in the next 15 days, but before they could pass any form of punishment, Grandpa died in the hospital. I guess it must be in Grandma's luck to die before Grandpa, but whatever the case, both of the deaths were quite unfortunate for us to witness.
In the early hours of Sunday, September 17th of 1995, 25-year-old Timothy Stone was driving his young family back from a cookout in their native city of Los Angeles. Also in the car were his 26-year-old partner, Robin Cohen, her 5-year-old son, Christopher, and her 3-year-old daughter, Stephanie, and their 2-year-old brother, Joseph. Timothy wasn't all that familiar with the Cypress Park neighborhood they were driving through, and given that it was almost 2 o'clock in the morning, he hardly had the best view of his immediate surroundings. And what was worse, many of the streetlights seemed to have been shot out. At a fork in the road, Timothy turned onto the 2000 block of Isabel Street, a dark, narrow, dead-end alley that was covered in gang-related graffiti, including one piece that read, Avenida de los Asesinos, the Street of Killers. Timothy had taken a wrong turn, one that would take him and his young family into one of the most dangerous places in the whole of California. the territory of a street gang known as El Avenidas. Notorious as LA's most violent Latino gangster sets, the Avenues, as they're better known as, have a long history of involvement with the Mexican mafia. Respect, loyalty, and secrecy are the cornerstones of their savage belief system, while any challenge to their authority, both real or perceived, is met with swift and brutal displays of ferocity. So, when up to 20 members of La Aves saw an unknown vehicle headed through the heart of their well-defined territory, they saw it as both a direct threat and a direct challenge to their reign. The Avenue Gang are also infamous for their participation in anti-black hate crimes against innocent African-American inhabitants of their neighborhoods. Their violence grew so prolific and hateful at one point that some called their actions a campaign of ethnic cleansing directed at honest, hard-working members of the black community here in Los Angeles. However, when gang members surrounded the vehicle, it would be abundantly clear that Timothy and his family were no rival gangsters or undercover cops. Not only did they appear to be a straight-laced Caucasian couple, but the inclusion of multiple children in the car precluded the possibility of it being some kind of law enforcement operation. Timothy and Robin must have been absolutely terrified as the first of several trash cans smashed into their vehicle. This seems to have been the gang member's way of telling Timothy to back off, and he swiftly began to make a rather erratic U-turn. Only, rather than simply letting the family leave, others threw large steel trash cans in front of their wheels, slowing them long enough for a group of gangsters to completely surround the terrified family. Both Timothy and Robin begged for the men to let them go, but they refused until they received a satisfactory answer to their questions of why the couple was in their barrio, or neighborhood. Timothy simply apologized over and over again, but it was no good. One of the gang members produced a pistol, aimed it at Timothy's face, and threatened to pull the trigger. In a complete panic, Timothy simply put his foot down, plowing into the human roadblock in the hopes that they could make a sudden escape. More than one of the gang was wielding a firearm by that point, and when the front end of Timothy's car smashed into them, they emptied their weapons into the windshield, sending round after round ripping through both flesh and upholstery alike. One bullet struck 3-year-old Stephanie in the head as she lay in her mother's arms. Her 2-year-old brother Joseph was hit in the left foot, and a bullet grazed the flesh of Timothy's back. The family rushed to the hospital, hoping that the lives of their young children could be saved. Joseph made nothing short of a full recovery, but young Stephanie was unable to be revived, passing away just a few hours later, her broken-hearted parents just a few feet away behind a closed door when her time of death was called. The murder sparked widespread anger and outrage, with former President Clinton summing up the national spirit by saying, "A family took one wrong turn, and because they were in the wrong place, gang members felt that they had the right to shoot at them and take their lives and kill an innocent child." Many wondered how such a horrifically senseless killing could occur in the first place, and as journalists descended on Cypress Park, the public began to learn of the pure horror endured by the neighborhood's residents on a daily basis. Not only were innocent people losing their lives in the crossfire of rampant gang warfare, but the hideous initiation rites of the gang's new members often involved them gunning down civilians in order to prove their loyalty. Cypress Park was a place where a run to the corner store for a carton of milk could mean losing your life, and for no reason other than you were randomly selected for death. Many Americans couldn't believe this was happening in the same country as them, but for others, it was the reality that greeted them every time they walked out into the street. Stephanie Cohen was laid to rest a week later. A dozen Los Angeles police officers served as honor guard, with 4 generations of the Cohen family filling the small stone church of the Recessional in Glendale, where cousin Michael Fanning referred to Stephanie as God's little angel. At the time of the service, the search for her killers was almost drawing to a close. They had profiles on all of the gang members local to that particular area of Cypress Park. All they needed to do was find the triggermen. Not long after, 28-year-old Anthony Gabriel Rodriguez, 22-year-old Manuel Rosales Jr., and 18-year-old Hugo David Gomez were arrested and charged with the attack on a terrified young family that was simply unfortunate enough to have made a wrong turn on a dark night. At the end of their trial on August 1, 1997, a judge sentenced all three to 54 years to life in state prison, to be served in separate penitentiaries on opposite sides of California. The American people breathed a collective sigh of relief as the news that Stephanie's killers had been brought to justice. Yet since then, the nation has struggled with the violent gang activity that plagues most of its major metropolitan areas, with St. Louis and Baltimore boasting a murder rate almost double that of other cities. Surely it's only a matter of time before another innocent family, both local and non-local, are unlucky enough to make a wrong turn that ends in their brutal, merciless execution.
In September of 2022, a 20-year-old Australian university student posted a harrowing personal account to the popular social media site. In it, she detailed the terrifying ordeal she'd been subject to after posting intimate pictures of herself on a social media page known as OnlyFans. One involved obsessive stalking, internet loopholes, and ultimately, a clear and present threat to her life. Only through a completely anonymous throwaway account that she feels safe enough to share a story, adding that her local police force had finally taken action against the person responsible. But even then, the girl made it clear that her complaints should have been taken seriously long before she was in any imminent danger. According to the girl, the incidents all started after she moved back with her parents during the summer break. The girl was particularly excited to be home as the family had just bought a new puppy. By all accounts, the girl was having a ball getting to know her new furry friend. But as anyone who's ever had a puppy will tell you, to say they can be erratic would be the understatement of the century. On night, the girl awoke to hear her puppy yelping at the back door. They were in the middle of the potty and went downstairs to let the dog out. She says it was as late as 2 a.m., and there didn't seem to be another soul around as she stepped down into the night, but as soon found out she wasn't entirely alone. I saw this figure in a car, she said. I could tell they were looking at me, but it was pitch black outside, and I couldn't make out their face. I felt a bit uneasy, but I didn't really think anything of it. Only when I go back inside, the car started up and followed me up my driveway. The terror of such an experience is undeniable, and even though the girl was so close to home, there's no denying that being out alone in the middle of the night made her very vulnerable indeed. I was terrified, the girl added. I sprinted back inside and locked the door and kept my eye out for them in case they tried to break in. But as far as I know, they just backed out the driveway and left. Then she woke up the following morning after a terrible night of restless sleep and deep concern. The girl found an envelope and said her parents left her box. The envelope contained not only $28 Australian in cash, but also her OnlyFans username. I thought long and hard about how he could have found my parents' address, the girl said. Now working out the problem didn't start until I shared my Amazon wish list. OnlyFans and Amazon were both adamant that the security systems prevent leaks from taking place. However, it appeared that wasn't the issue. A third-party seller was not bound to the same data protection laws as large multinational companies. Although she doesn't know for certain how her stalker got her address, the girl is 90% sure that they got in touch with a third-party seller and obtained her home address in that way. Whether it was money, coercion, or intimidation that caused the seller to give up the info is another question entirely, but the fact remains that's the most likely of all explanations. After that, when I moved back to the college town where I was studying, I stopped posting content. The girl goes on to explain, but somehow my stalkers still managed to track me down.
The girl said she basically closed down her fans account and started a YouTube account because of how unsafe the former felt. Her first big blogging project was due to be a shopping trip to a local mall, but when she got to her car to depart for the day, she found that she had been ransacked. The vlogging camera was missing too. She said, "I know that's my fault for leaving it in the car, but I was using it the night before, and since I live in a gated area, I didn't think I would be unsafe." Then she added that the camera was inside of her glove box and contained an SD card with unreleased photos and videos on it. It was almost like someone knew it was there. But as bad as it was, it only got weirder from there. She eventually contacted her building security personnel asking if they could review security camera footage from the previous few nights, and it was through this that not only did she see a man break into her car and ignore other cars in the parking lot, but she also had proof she was being deliberately singled out for targeted harassment. After they got the camera, they walked around the duplex until stopping nearby my window. The girl wrote, "My bedroom faces an outside street and the blinds are broken, so it's very easy to see in. I have a curtain, but it doesn't cover my wall into all the way. Look, what I'm trying to say is this person watched me sleep for an hour, so I have no idea why they didn't try to break in, but thank God they didn't." The woman explained her camera was later recovered at a nearby secondhand store, suggesting whoever is stalking her has a prior history of criminality. However, she added that the camera's memory card was missing. "I know he kept it as some kind of trophy, I just know it." She added, and has since moved in hopes his stalker hasn't followed. "I believe the police are still trying to track them down, but I have broken my lease and moved to a new place, so hopefully this will keep me safe." But what's so scary about the girl's story is that it seems like only a matter of time before the stalker decides to take things further, unless they're caught. Stalkers will only ever escalate their activities until their obsession reaches a deadly and permanent end.